Okay, well, welcome very much. We're here now in Pereira Park, talking with Robert Pollard. We're going to introduce him and talk about his life's work, what he's involved with. He's an ecologist of the highest order and an information technology person. Really happy to be able to be doing a program with him here at this park in the upper west side of Manhattan. And Bob, welcome very much to conversation. So good to see you again.
Harold, hi. It's actually La Perla Garden.
La Perla, yeah, I guess the pearl.
It's
the
a
pearl
Spanish
in Spanish,
word for
yeah.
And it was founded in 1991. Used to be vacant lot.
I think it's really good they got these parks where people are paying attention to some of the vacant lots and the gardens that are around the city. It's very important ecological contribution.
Right, and I grew up, my mother was a passionate gardener. My father was in real estate, and so he real estate agent, and we always had wonderful gardens and houses. So to have a space like this in New York is just wonderful.
We can detect a bit of a British accent. We might get to that when we ask your background, but the gardens in England are really taken care of, and they're a wonder of the world, it seems to me, the gardens of England.
Well, I think there is something very, very special about it. My mother's garden for Friendly Green Cottage was one of the most beautiful gardens in my mind.
Carefully
but there
tended.
were so many, but also the patch of wild orchids that she found that were in the area, in the valley, right next to the train track. And she saved them because of drainage things. They were being drained and dying. So she negotiated with the farmers, and it's now recognized as a site of special scientific interest.
It's an interesting...
So love of wildflowers, and she used to do these paintings, beautiful paintings, watercolors, botanical watercolors, just beautiful.
Wonderful, yeah.
Have a book this thick of her paintings.
Wonderful, wonderful.
That's all just within their garden.
Yeah, it's an interesting metaphor, isn't it? A garden where you're tending to things, human input to, let's say, wild nature, which has a great, there's a great deal of good to be said for both aspects of that connecting humanity with the larger environment.
Right, and I think La Perla Garden is a wonderful example because of the diversity. If you look around, you'll see so many different things, and it keeps changing. And it's, I think that part of understanding diversity that's often really lost in this mass media, but I think I've talked to you about the McBride report.
Oh, Ian McBride? No.
Sean McBride.
Sean McBride, of course. Wonderful,
Many Voices, One World.
Yeah.
Well, the vision that he described, I want to do some kind of, panel on Many Voices, One World, the McBride report revisited.
Oh, good. When did the report come?
That was 1980, and that was the catalyst for the U.S. and the UK and some other countries to leave UNESCO.
Okay.
It's a conflict between the big media, there's different perspectives, but I see it as, the Western media companies that dominated the news, and a one-way flow of news had to be regulated and constrained, and the capacity of developing country news sources.
Right.
But the vision that he just ends up in 1980 is amazingly what he describes as what's become the internet.
Okay, really? Okay.
It was just and I've converted it into HTML from a scanned copy I found.
Oh, good.
And I've got it almost all the way. There's some little tables that are fiddly.
Yeah, right.
I'm hoping to have some interns to work with me soon, because once I can get them, all the in the database, it would be like, really, really nice stuff.
Yeah, you've got this great feel for ecology and so forth, and peace, and a lot of things. You were at Habitat, one of the major UN conferences, and you're also interested in information technology in more than just a fiddling way, as you say.
You describe me as an ecologist, but I think I'm most of all an information ecologist. My title is Professor of Information Ecology, Information Habitat. And information ecology for me is recognizing that within the information world, that www out there, space, there are creatures and species and diversity, and there are things that are growing, and that has part of the nature of a universe that's not constrained by the laws of conservation of mass and energy. Because information doesn't have any mass, it doesn't have any physical size. It can be reproduced freely. the Nash equilibrium.
Uh-huh.
You know, there was an article, a quote in Zillow was the name of the real estate assessment company that he set up. They said if any company that doesn't set free a market strategy based on a price of free is bound to encounter problems.
I think it's heading that way, isn't it?
It is,
Increasingly.
and this is a new Nash, a profound shift to a new Nash global equilibrium.
A new mass?
Nash.
Nash.
Nash equilibrium. Nash
what is Nash?
Was the who won the Nobel Prize for this theory.
Okay, I'm familiar.
When you move into a knowledge-based environment outside of the constraints where the cost of information becomes a free good. You move to a different equilibrium. The center of your activity, instead of being, in a sense, a center of gravity, such as a physical thing, becomes a center of levity, of lightness, and of, you know, we walk so heavily on the earth.
We do,
And that's one of the things I love about this garden is both, you know, both the place to sit and spend some time just looking and enjoying the beauty and having conversations. It's a garden where a lot of conversations take place.
Yeah, surely. It's particularly in the summertime or in the spring now. Is everything
in the summertime?
No,
it's not. I'm a year-round gardener. I've always been a gardener of all seasons.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get much in this summer. In the winter, I do a lot of stuff with the rocks and the bricks. I love sort of landscaping things. Just
in this garden?
In this garden, most of the bricks, the rocks, the path in front of the compost, which you haven't seen.
We have some works of art over there that some kids have put up.
Some kids, have done.
Yeah, that's good.
That was done. And we've got other thoughts. And so anyhow, where were we?
Yeah.
But information ecology. That there are, just as there are species and different types of beings in the garden here, so there's a garden in that space where there's wikis and tiddlywikis and media wikis and groups and YouTubes and all these different spaces where people can connect freely.
That's really interesting.
And exchange and build each other's wealth of knowledge. When knowledge becomes the currency, the essence of wealth.
Yeah, it does, and it's also changing very greatly. I wonder if we could back up a little bit and just say, I wanted you to share your background. You're from England, right?
I'm England,
Maybe you share a little of that.
I grew up in England. My father grew up in South Croydon, which was 10 miles south of central London. It was the busiest, or the sort of main, and the first fast stop from London on the train, East Croydon. And we grew up comfortably. We always had a sort of modest but comfortable house and garden. And I went to the primary school, the public school.
Oh, wait a minute, let's get it straight, because you have private school and public school in England, and they're opposite.
The elementary school, I went to the council school, the primary school, the free school.
Yes.
But then I got a scholarship to Whitgift School.
To what?
Whitgift School.
Okay.
Whitgift had been the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, I see.
And before that, Vice Chancellor of Cambridge University and Master of Trinity College.
Right.
So he was Elizabethan time, and his name means white gift.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because of the cubes. You've seen those cubes.
I think the color cubes you do
those cubes are gifts. It's like trinity of whiteness.
Okay.
It's a gift of light. Actually, it's sort of light gift rather than wit gift, but it's the same sort of imagery.
And the family was interested in things intellectual, for want of another term, or concerned with the world outside of their immediate context in that, or
very, very much.
Yeah.
They were. My mother, we lived mostly a vegetarian diet. If it had just been for my mother, we would have been. But we had a lot of vegetarian food. Always a nice, Sunday dinner. Very kind of. We had a regular and good food. I used to help out with the cooking. I've always enjoyed cooking.
You have those wonderful fish and chips in
Fish
England.
and chips are wonderful.
They're wonderful, particularly in a newspaper, wrapped in a newspaper with, that's traditional. And bangers. That's a sausage.
I was never so
You
much
weren't a
into
banger fan, right?
No,
but then you went out. Then you went to school there, and then did you do more education?
Then I was. when it came to, I was 12 or whatever, I had to choose between doing math or science, or no, science or language, I can't remember. But anyhow, I ended up doing languages, because if I'd done the science, I'd have had to cut up animals. I didn't want to do that.
Really? You were sensitive
right
to that, right?
Yeah,
I can remember a friend of mine and I were going to become scientists when I was young in Detroit, and we wanted to dissect something, and we had a drain pipe that had a little nest of sparrows, and we caught the sparrow with a woman's stocking, and then the thing came, who's going to do the sparrow in so we can dissect it, and neither of us had the heart to do that, so we let the sparrow go. And I hope the descendants of that are still flying around free in Michigan, you know. But it gave up on my scientific career for the same sensibility. I ended
up doing languages and classics, like taking Latin.
You did classics,
Greek, Latin and Greek, and French. I loved French. I enjoyed the French. And the French teacher was very good. He just sort of really helped us do these little sort of rhythmic things to that are fun and playful, but just to practice different pronunciation of different letters. The Latin guy was good. But then the Greek guy was a jock. Who really, I mean, we went through
a Spartan, I would take
but there was never any sense of the, you know, the wonders of the civilization and that whole process, any sense of the broader context in which these stories were taking place.
Politically?
But it's interesting, my daughter she got her, when she got a Rhodes Scholarship, she
got a Rhodes, really?
Yeah, she took her, her Rhodes in Masters in English and Classics.
Okay.
So she writes and speaks.
They used to have the 11 plus test. Do they still have that in England?
I don't think so.
They don't have that, where they sort of weed out the people. And it was very, very much, coming out of the Second War and so forth even, it was very much more elitist in terms of the people that went to university than it's become, or it has been here in the United States. Everybody goes to college of a sort, you know.
Yeah, and I think I was kind of fortunate. My family was respectable and solid, and I was bright, you know, and the opportunities, I wasn't, you know, some of the people, I then from Whitgift went to Cambridge and got a scholarship to Cambridge.
All right, now you got a scholarship to Cambridge.
Because what happened,
not anybody gets a scholarship to Cambridge. That's quite an achievement.
Right, before that, after we took these exams, the GCE, General Certificate of Education, O level, ordinary level.
Okay.
I did very well in math and French, and not so well in Latin, and poorly in Greek.
Yeah.
And I realized it would be, I decided I'd actually go do physics. I basically did math.
Yeah, math
so
is good basic.
For my advanced studies, I took pure and applied maths and physics.
I see. At Cambridge?
No, this was at Whitgift.
At Whitgift,
it was quite a specialized, you know, it was all pre-college, you know, but
sure. Yeah, I know.
Quite.
But it wasn't a grammar school.
No, it was a public school.
Oh,
it was a private, public school, you know, that most people paid to get in, but there was no
But you had won a scholarship. Congratulations, like Obama got a scholarship, you know, our presidential candidate.
And then I applied. The hope was that I'd get a scholarship at Trinity.
Yes.
Because Whitgift had been that relationship with Trinity.
Exactly.
But I didn't, but I got an open, you do it for a group, and I got what's called an open exhibition. It's a minor scholarship, but it's a scholarship.
Yes, indeed.
In mathematics.
And to be admitted to Cambridge is no small matter. That's the Oxbridge thing where, you know, an empire was built on graduates from the Oxbridge mix of colleges and so forth. I think, you know. But that's good. You did, and you took a degree there.
I took a degree in math, but then I became involved with I'd become involved with Bertrand Russell and the CND, and got involved with all those groups, the Labour Club, the Socialist Group, and ended up, and the economics department was the hotbed. A lot of it was Keynesian, Marxist.
Yes, dialect.
Economics there. So I ended up moving into economics.
You sound a little bit Renaissance, as they say. You kind of got a wide interest in everything.
Got very, very.
Did I say you were associated with Bertrand Russell?
No,
I mean,
directly,
not directly.
But I was supportive, you know, after having not been
Pugwash
being hit with her. I didn't get involved in the details, but it was like I was, you know, I was promoting that sort of sense.
What about on the political side? Were you involved in things, your family and yourself, in the context into, like, say, roughly the peace movement, Gandhi, Martin King as it was coming over the horizon?
Dylan. I was into Dylan.
Bobby Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
Wasn't he something else, man? He was a real poet.
And R.D. Lang.
R.D. Lang,
well, this was really about the time I was at Cambridge.
Oh, you were at Cambridge.
This was while I was at Cambridge.
Yeah.
A lot of different music, and it's, again, I found myself very much at home. My father was, I got a basic sense of economics.
Okay.
From my father, a sort of groundedness and
okay.
And sort of
where did you end up? I can remember President Nixon saying in 1972, we're all, he was talking about the world in a very real sense, all Keynesians now. I don't know if you remember that famous statement of his. And what I'd like to ask you from the perspective of the years since, what are we all now in terms of economic theory that informs the political and sociological pattern for spaceship Earth in terms of economic theory that's so important? What are we all now, as we were in 72, all Keynesians, if we are anything? Or are you still following that economic theory course?
I think we are all in the process of moving to this new global Nash equilibrium.
Okay.
That is the centerpiece, the mathematical, almost proof. The reason that open source software is free is because the marginal cost of reproducing and making a copy is free. And for anyone who contributed to it, they do it to resolve a problem that they've encountered for themselves.
Yes.
By solving for themselves and sharing it with others, they get to benefit from everybody else who solves problems.
Yeah, right.
And it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And you can sell services around it, and there's a lot of people that say, yes, I understand that, I've heard about these things, and you need someone to set it up. But there's a growing array, and part of what my major upcoming focus that I'm hoping to set up with a prospective internship program at St. John's University.
You're in the works doing that now?
Yeah, okay. Dolly, one of my partners, Dolly Nielsen, who's the executive producer of Metro City Media, and who ran Silicon Alley Station, that was news, radio, audio stuff, and got a lot of archives. And she's the person who's introduced me to this wonderful flip video.
A wonderful flip video.
What
have you got? He pulled something out of his pocket here, ladies and gentlemen.
I've been using this.
And what this is what is this that you pull out of your pocket?
This is like
Superman.
Very inexpensive device.
Good Lord, I have to get glasses to see that, but yeah.
Yeah, and that also has a little USB, so you just upload it to and you just can copy it onto your drive and upload it onto YouTube.
All right, and you got video.
Video, yeah.
Yeah, and how much will that hold? I mean, how large a file?
It'll hold an hour.
An hour of video. You're making recording now?
Yeah.
This is recording within a recording, and this is something that is likely to become more and more part of the human experience as we try to understand what the heck's going on.
This is almost live. I mean, I'll have this on the internet today as a preview.
No fooling. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Listen, while I'm here, I should zoom in on
on our camera
on our
guy.
cameraman.
Yeah.
And the host, the wonderful Joe Friendly, host and executive producer of Truth for a Change.
An inspired name for a title.
His name, Joe Friendly, says it all.
Yeah.
At least most of the time.
Yeah.
Almost all the time.
And you two guys are bosom buddies.
And we've been living, Christine and I, my wife, you know that,
sure.
Christine Fye.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we've been living in his cramped space and making it even more cramped, but also straightening it out a little bit.
I think that's going to
keeping the kitchen
the Joe Friendly apartment is going to be made a national landmark, I believe.
I think so.
I think so. It deserves that.
I think so, yeah.
With a big flag flying up on top to mark it for all the tourists to come in and come and pay homage. Right. Anyway, that's amazing. How long have you had that thing? It's called Flip.
I've got it on loan, but it can do an hour.
You're recording now?
I'm recording now, yeah.
Okay. Are you listening, Langley? Okay.
So, no, and this is part of what we want to do with the human rights thing, is look at communities to get these and do interviews with the elders, with the children, with the different minorities, disadvantaged people who've been, and people who are also working to promote and uphold human rights.
Okay, yeah.
And find and offer support for those who need it.
Yeah, we have
It's a vast network, but what in a sense is the idea is that this kind of this UDHR at 60 plus
I don't know what that means.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Oh, yes.
At 60 plus.
Yeah.
The 60th anniversary is coming up in December.
It was 48,
This is focusing on 60 plus. What happens beyond that?
Right.
It's using the act, and Christine decorated a black and white logo with a flame.
Right.
And with the wreath in green. You've seen it on the website.
I guess I have, yeah.
On the NGO Framework website.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to recall. I don't recall right immediately.
Anyhow,
but okay.
and then 60s.
Logos are really important.
And the plus is quite distinctive. And I've got it scaled at different sizes, so I have it in the, when you see a website, there's a little icon associated on your tab bar.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've got a very small thing of it there, and it's just, it's very light.
That's an important document, is it not?
I'm hoping that this is something that we'll organize a conference a year from now through St. John's.
Okay.
And the co-chair of the NGO Congo Education Committee is a professor, assistant professor in French at St. John's, so she would participate and really work through that education as a liaison to the Info Poverty Network that I just kind of stumbled across this last weekend, which is, are you familiar with that? Info Poverty?
No, I'm not, but I should.
.net.
Infopoverty.net. Okay, I'm going to go to
It's an amazing group of people, very, very interesting, some very creative people doing it at a grassroots level. Also, though, very interestingly, a strong presence from, of all places, the Faith-Based and Community Organization Initiative Center in the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Interesting.
And representative of church group, of Christian universities that were involved in major projects in Rwanda and elsewhere.
Right.
And discovered in the process, I was looking up on Wikipedia about
Isn't it something else?
About the Faith-Based and Community Initiative. They didn't have very much, and I found the page. They produced a 122-page report called The Quiet Revolution.
Oh, okay.
And
now, who produced it?
This is the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. This was the first and second executive orders signed by President Bush. Were to establish the office in the White House and to establish 5 other offices.
I remember the
housing, human services, and wherever. Since then, they've established them in about, I think, 12 different agencies, a whole strategy. This report, The Quiet Revolution, describes their strategy, how they've been doing it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting reading. There's also anyhow.
It's interesting it comes from there.
It's interesting it comes from there, and it's interesting that I don't think anyone's paying attention to that. This is the first priority of the Bush administration.
Well, it was. I know
at some level that has been abandoned in many ways, and I think it's been abandoned by his inability, somehow not hearing Jesus' teaching to love thine enemy and bless those who curse you.
Yeah, and
he's got to curse back and shout back, rather than blessing them and recognizing that they don't have, for whatever may they be forgiven.
Yeah, and all of our spiritual leaders have more or less, one of the principal things they've said is take care of the least among you. And I noticed that among the political leadership over history, they've been roundly ignored, that advice from our spiritual real leaders and so forth. I remember that faith-based thing that was headed up by a fellow, and then he had a strong falling out with the fact that the Bush administration was not following through on it. And also there were people who were very upset about the separation of church and state, and why do things have to go through church, that kind of thing. That's just a couple things come to mind.
And reading that book, that report, The Quiet Revolution, you see how much has been done in building all that infrastructure into the government, at local, state, national level.
How much has been done?
And in so many key agencies.
You're telling me there has a great deal been done?
There has been a great deal
Okay,
been
well,
done.
I'll have to go revisit it.
And what I want to do is pull out the numbers from the reports of each of the 50 states and just chart that and look at it a little more closely.
Yeah, we were just interrupted. I would change the mic. We had wind noise, that kind of thing. But, I mean, they haven't been listening to these people. I'd be interested in revisiting that. In the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, magnificent document, Eleanor Roosevelt had a heck of a time getting that through. and everything, but it's a major one. Along with, what are some of the others we
This is the thing that
the rights of man.
This for me is part of what I don't think enough attention has been paid to, and part of the framework of UDHR at 60 plus, which is that it's a whole body of conventions and treaties and regulations and commissions and national institutions and local state institutions and a whole supportive framework that's been built up. When I went to a conference leading into Rio, which is sort of jumping over quite a few years from Cambridge.
What was the Rio again, 92?
Rio was 92 with the Earth Summit, where I through what was then the International Synergy Institute, was basically pioneering the use of information technology and produced this Daji Bao leading into and at the thing, which is this the Chinese term that means war poster, and it's these war posters, slogans that they would write up, 50-word messages. And people would write them on little forms. We'd gather them together and publish them as they were produced. Very wonderful and very interesting technology. I had about more than 100 people working with me as volunteers.
Really, on that, right. They had another thing, the wall. Somebody put up signs on a wall somewhere.
The first time we did it was on a wall. The first time we did it was in Paris in 91, in December 91. And we were a small crew, and it was so popular. I had to improvise together with different people with different computers, and there were still a handful of laptops around in those days.
Yeah, it was just
gather it all into disk and import it into my database and produce it. But so we had photocopies of them just posted around the wall. And it was, I've got a few photos of it. I have to dig them up.
And I think it was out of that conference where Agenda 21 came up, looking for that. I think that a lot of people are a little disappointed in the terms of some of the reduction of poverty and some of these goals that were set aren't being met as well as we'd hoped they might be able to out of that that Rio conference and the Agenda 21. What do you think?
I go back to Our Common Future, the report of the Brundtland Commission. And that really said that the different crises that we face are not separate crises. They're part of a crisis
it's all
of the
interconnected.
Whole. We're moving into a world and this knowledge-based universe with this zero price freedom.
I want to get back to that.
These larger freedoms exist. Is that space towards which everybody is heading, consciously or not? Everybody is doing more and more work,
with
spending
less
more
and less.
more time through that technology. Through that medium. In one way or another, it might be via iPhone. It might be via there's more and a growing proportion more of people connected to the internet via cell phone than there is via via desktops or notebooks.
That's right. They're going to be
more and more are becoming wireless. More and more it's the whole landscape is changing and the connection. And the bodies of public information, the Creative Commons. You're familiar with the Creative Commons?
Yes, I am.
Did you see him on Lawrence Lessig on Amy Goodman a couple of days ago?
No, I didn't.
He was wonderful.
Really?
He's just a champion. He's at law professor at Stanford. He's just brilliant.
He's really good. He's really good. Lessing, is it Lawrence Lessing? Is that it?
Lawrence Lessing.
Lawrence Lessing. He's there. He really is good.
Take a look at that link.
He really is. And all that stuff is going, and all of this stuff, we're in cable, and then it's all, in the streaming, and it's coming multimedia now as possible, and now they're going to morph into the cell phone universe, which is huge everywhere. They got cell phones all over Africa, whereas they don't have a lot of the other material things, and it's really important source of communication.
And not just communication, but wealth. I think Yochai Benkler's book, The Wealth of Network, really describes
Who's
Yochai Benkler. He's the code
B-A-N?
B-E-N-K-L-E-R. And he was at NYU, then at Yale. Now he's at Harvard at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, and as a co-faculty director or whatever, I'm not sure quite the title, but something like that. He's an amazing person and published an amazing book last maybe a year, maybe two, almost 2 years ago, and at the same time put it on a wiki and made it available under a Creative Commons license. So we were able to, I've actually converted...
Creative Commons?
Creative Commons is a
That's
new
an
form
interesting
of
concept.
copyright.
It's
a growing form. There's a variety of different ways that you can classify your work that gives certain rights. You can have by attribution. You have to do essay is share alike. So if you put it as I put most of mine as NC by SA, non-commercial, with attribution, share alike. So you can share it freely, but you can't use it for commercial reasons. It doesn't mean you say you can't do it for charitable purposes.
Right.
And for
That's very interesting. It links to, or like we've had copyright laws and things like that. Intellectual property rights are argued very vociferously and all that.
Essentially what's been happening is the nature of property and the center of gravity, the center now becoming the center of levity of property has shifted in this transition into this new universe which doesn't have the constraints. Wealth was constrained by the laws of conservation. If I have this and give it to you, I can't also have it. But if I have this video and beam it to you, I've still got it, you've still got it, you can give it to Joe.
And it's all going almost exponential now. The rate of the changes coming out of the labs is incredible.
The imagery for me is one of the key elements of HTML, which cascading styles. Cascading is the process. We kind of, each time we move, we'll cascade over another. We'll find some level stuff, but then there'll be another kind of waterfall of moving into a different space that we didn't know about.
Well, yeah,
that's so much easier.
Well, what about linking it up? I just got through watching that whole series on John Adams at HBO's, and it was wonderfully done and everything. And so there you had, that was the time of Adam Smith and steam engine, and we were in a very different kind of world in terms of information. I think it took, I'm not sure, but I think it took 3 months to get a letter from London to New York or Washington by clipper ship or something. And I mean, it was a whole different kind of realm in terms of communication, smoke signals, Pony Express. It was a very different thing. Telegraph wasn't there, that kind of thing. So all of these things have come in the information realm. But how does all this information capability and the capability of design, level of design and so forth, interrelate to the traditional economics? You studied economics that has to do with things like steel, coal, energy, roads, agriculture.
Let me address roads and
that sort of thing.
Let me address roads.
The more traditional aspects of economics.
There's a big issue. Mayor Bloomberg has just failed to get through this congestion thing.
They're going to change never mind.
What he's not addressing is what is the process that makes people have to move in all to the same place, and how much can this be done if we did broadband? I was shocked. I was shocked at the Manhattan hearings on broadband to hear someone from Sofia, Bulgaria, who had been there at a time when he could tap into 10 gigabits fiber, and now it's up to a terabit of fiber. The ability to move information, be able to meet with people in comfortable spaces without traveling from here to there. Well, even if you use public transport, it's still a burden.
Yes, indeed.
And it's your own time and energy.
Of course.
And, this for me, the garden is the other side of it, but my other work, I'm sitting at my computer, I don't have to expend any energy. I don't have to take the train. I can make myself a cup of coffee when I'm thirsty. I can have myself something to eat whenever I want to eat.
Wonderful.
I can take a rest when I want to take a rest. It's so much more a natural way, and then looking towards really learning how to become self-sufficient and to work from a small space and not to have to travel. I mean, if you look at village life in the old days, it wasn't traveling miles and miles and miles a long time. It was working in your own community.
That's true. But again, you're relating mostly to the information tech. You cannot get a cup of coffee through the internet. You can't get atoms through the internet.
But if you look about how much more if you look at the people's budgets and how much they're spending on connectivity and what they're getting for it. It is it's a very major direction, one that needs to be shifted even more. So that, for example, all of your programs And your website needs some serious work.
I know. Well,
I could design it, but you need to get somebody to do it. You need to pay somebody.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I don't.
$1,000, couple $1,000.
Well, that's another issue. Yeah. But
or learn yourself. Become an apprentice. If you want to become an apprentice, I can teach you.
Well, maybe the sorcerer's apprentice, huh? Yeah. But no, but what I'm trying to get you, what I'm trying to do is to get you to relate not to the world of bits and bytes and so forth, but the world of atoms, real things, like the traditional things that we were concerned with in terms of the discipline of economics.
Take a wireless,
agricultural products, stores, buildings, tables.
Let me give you an example, though, of wireless versus wired. You can create, now someone had this estimate that in rural sort of reasonably spread out communities, over large areas, you could provide broadband wireless access for €1 per person per year.
Right. Okay.
Now, how much do you pay Time Warner?
Quite a bit. I'm not even sure. It's quite a bit more.
You pay a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Most people will pay, $300 or $400 or more a month.
A lot of places.
A year, over a year.
I think there are places that are hot.
So the ability
all of Macedonia
to move
is hot.
into that, there's some amazing economy.
Yeah, but again,
and you don't need to build the roads to install the wires.
Well, wait a
bring
minute.
all the equipment to dig up the wires and put up the posts and dig the tunnels. You don't. You leave the.
Yeah, but you
still need a road to market.
That's right.
But that's done in a different way.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do the disruption of the telegraph poles or the
right.
The things along
But what I was trying, and I want to talk about the Nash thing. I want you to spell that out more and everything, because it's really interesting and it's cutting edge and it's the way we're going. And we've got to, if you're understanding, a lot of people say the economics is the science of the allocation of scarce resources, and you're talking about everything's becoming free and it's becoming more expansive. But what I'm trying to talk to you about here is not that. Just stop. Let's stop. It's 1950 or something. There is no computer. There is no cable. There's none of these things. It's just the world of agriculture, steel mills, automobiles, roads, tables being made, cups of coffee, real things that are being exchanged within the economy. How do we relate to the traditional economy that we're coming out of in terms of this new one without just, is it going to be subsumed? How much of it is? Okay, we had a little mix-up with the audio again, so we're back again.
To respond
well, I was talking about making a differentiation between economics and realize when we talk about the canon of economic theory, and you've done a lot of things, I think it's really important to understand that, and that relates to the world of what Negroponte at MIT and everything would call atoms, as opposed to bits and bytes. And it's real things, and that's the context within which all economic theory that forms our institutional structure.
Well, that's what's shifting. That's what's shifting, because the economic benefits, the economies, the amount of time and energy that's saved, and the cost of material. When I Google information and get information that I didn't have, that information is of value to me.
Yes.
So that adds value to my life.
Yes, it does.
It also then, that value is in solving problems that I'm addressing.
That's true.
On creating things, on building things.
Right.
On doing things in a way that's better in balance, that comes to terms with the crisis of climate change.
Yes.
This garden itself is just like a little example of a shift in climate change. We need to make these spaces, and we need to monitor, and we need to look at how we can create at least islands of biodiversity. There's a lot more could be done, which I hope we can do, of building, the worms. There were almost no worms when I started composting here.
Really?
Now, it was the best thing for me was Easter Sunday, not last year, but last year, when I turned over the compost pile, and there was so many worms. Each time, each forkful I dug up,
Ode to Joy playing.
There must have been hundreds. There must have been tens of thousands of worms. It was just wonderful. And there's a lot of things. There's a fig tree. You get a lot of birds, cardinals, robins.
Right. No, I understand. Yeah, that's wonderful. I couldn't agree with you more and everything like that. And we all walk around in a sea of bacteria. It's all basic, and it's all one seamless web. Everything's interconnected.
I suppose then that this garden you could sit at home and log in and see this garden and have it on your screen somewhere. I would actually like to do that. Is have, you know, a handful, you know, maybe they're not very expensive, really.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you got the wiring in, so you can download it.
Or wireless.
You could have 8 or 10 of them around. That would just be on, and you could choose which ones.
It really is heading because
they're so different.
We're heading toward, as you said, terabyte computing capacity. We're heading toward unlimited capacity, really. And Ray Kurzweil writes about it and so forth. And that we're heading toward. We now can extend multimedia into the environment in this way and exchange it and everything, and it's going to end up with holography. We're going to end up with holographic images and holographic capabilities, and we could just put ourselves in a Botswana park or something like that. It's a tremendous transformation, but we're all caught up within economic institutions and assumptions.
But the economic institutions, the center of the economic institutions, has changed.
Okay.
The banking crisis shows the center of power. Now, I mean, you look at the role of Connecticut and the hedge funds there, and the amazing sort of shift, but also the volatility.
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster.
That's based on a debt-based, you know, and extravagant. Reckless spending on military purposes, most of all. It's the most destructive. It both destroys the earth as much as anything. I mean, look at the Gulf War when, you know, again,
91, you mean?
In 91. I mean, that's when I parted ways with the United States government because...
You did? Okay.
No, because there were a lot of diplomatic efforts going on, Gorbachev and others, to resolve that peacefully. There was a clear misunderstanding, very mixed messages at best, however you look at it, with April Glasper, from who was...
Yes, indeed.
And so there's a whole story there.
They were schnookering them in, I think,
for
reasons of their own.
Those oil wells.
Yes, right.
You know, was that a price that region in the world should have to pay for? You know, and as in where there may have been other options.
Right. We've got these transformations in Nash. You're saying all the information technology, and there's promise in that too, because you know, it's interesting, isn't it, that the computing power or the raw power of computing is getting more and more, and the element by which it's done is getting smaller, and so we're going to end up soon with computer elements that are molecular, that will be going through the bloodstream. Well, through the semi-permeable cells
and things like that.
It's really amazing. But one of the things is saying you're able to do more. Let me just make a point, if I could, because it's an important point on the ecological side. You're able to do more with less.
Right.
That's the thing of a Schumpeter or
if I
Pollard,
had the Library of Alexandria on a USB device, I could give it to you.
You damn near will soon, I think.
You know, and that's part of what's happening, but it's far more diverse than that. It's a vast library, and it's at our fingertips, and knowledge becomes the center of wealth. That's what the intelligence is almost a natural intelligence in the ways that species relate, in the primacy of open systems architecture. Open systems architecture that's an open space, that creative space that you develop common standards, and there's not that. It's based on a sense of a common law in a sense. And it's a law for the laws, all the historical laws about property were basically based, so many of them, on theft of material objects.
Yeah, well, that's the material world is what we were in.
But the economy, if China, if India, if Malaysia, if whatever, Bangladesh, were to develop an economy, a culture, and a wealth of knowledge and education based on using these resources. It's a completely different learning environment.
It certainly gives options at the level of design, don't you think, in terms of setting up basic designs by which we're going to do things.
Yeah.
And great efficiencies. And one of the things
I'll give you an example is TiddlyWiki. This is the software platform that I'm using. I've now got about...
TiddlyWiki?
TiddlyWiki. Wiki is a Hawaiian word that means...
Is that what it
quick.
is?
swift.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Wiki.
Yeah.
And it's come to mean a website that can be set up very quickly, generally thought of in terms of Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, I think...
Which is quick to edit and add. But a TiddlyWiki is actually wickier because it's a freestanding wiki. It's so quick that you can download a template, go to the setup menu, put Harold Channer's TiddlyWiki, the voice of Conversations with Harold Channer, from now till eternity. And then set up each of your shows as a tiddler. And create a little menu with searchable boxes and stuff like that. These are the kind of design, and it's freestanding, so that if you like a particular design or features in it, something, there are all these little engines, these little tools that you can plug in. All those tools are free. And people develop and share. If you have any questions, you find them. There's a MediaWiki. MediaWiki is the software that powers Wikipedia, and Wikibooks, and Wiktionary, and all these other variants. And there's a MediaWiki site for TiddlyWiki. So I participated in that. I've done a lot of work on Wikipedia.
Have you? You have,
I really fell in love with it. Until it got to a point where I get these votes for deletion. Because I was introducing concepts that they said didn't exist, like information habitat or information species, or
your
cubes.
Ecologists. Your cubes, did they take a session to that? They were beautifully put together, use of color.
It got into a whole thing. I brought it up the other night, the other day, when Jimmy Wales was one of the panelists at NYU. And John Zittrain, who's one of the co-founders of the Berkman Center at Harvard, was there. It was a very interesting thing. It's on video. And do you remember Geo?
Geo.
Tall, thin guy, was around for the Social Summit.
I'm trying to, but I can't. I do have it in my head, but I don't have it real fixed on it.
He was there and videotaped it all with a good camera and everything like that. So we'll get it. We'll have that up on YouTube or Google Video or whatever.
They had a thing in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month, and they had a thing, and it was a chart of how they measured the input. And they had a chart, and the chart here was it was like this. They had a bar graph, 3 bar graphs. One was the Encyclopedia Britannica. The other was the Oxford Dictionary of the English Language, and they were like this, and they were like this in terms of the amount of input to those things. And then they had Wikipedia, and it was like that. That's been introduced over the last, 10 years or something like that.
Amazing,
it's an amazing
again,
thing.
It's an example.
Amazing.
The problems with it, however, let me say there are problems, criticism. Problems are that there's no registration process. There's no saying, if I'm willing to contribute, and I recognize these are my responsibilities, and this, I agree not to use things, whatever, to agree to certain principles. And then to do with the confirmed email
You better
address,
get rid of that, you're going to burn your finger.
So that you know that it was from somebody who could respond to
Well, that's
the
a problem with democracy in a way, because you've got people putting things in, the great unwashed masses, Ortega Gazette and that kind of stuff, and then you've got people who've gone to Cambridge and Oxford and gotten very carefully specialized in understanding of things. So you got a problem with those who think they know, elitists in a certain sense, with the mass coming in with all kinds of...
No, it's not.
That's their thinking, you understand?
No, I'm saying...
And it's not substantiated, it's not triple sourced or any of those things.
Some of those who are, maybe a disruptive element or an overzealous element in Wikipedia,
or it's a larger issue, really.
There's a whole bigger issue of how that thing. But this is why the TiddlyWiki is wonderful, because you have sovereignty for your TiddlyWiki. You can. It's a free market mechanism. Any information that other people have, any ways of doing stuff that other people have, any styles, any menus, any widgets, any whatever, you can add to yours just by importing them. And you can share, and if people like what you do, they can use that.
I wonder if I could take another...
So it changes the nature of... this becomes the workplace. This becomes the place is the factory. And if you look at the amount of wealth that's been generated, capital formation, increasingly it's in intellectual property and and delivery of information.
Well, that finally comes.
that whole process. This is the thing of moving. That's a non-carbon based. It's not a carbon.
Yes, that's right.
And that's why that's one of the keys to the economics is that it's much less expensive
in the
to
carbon
move
footprint
information than to move paper.
Yes, right.
You know, and then to use paper as a medium in one's work.
Let me ask you.
I very rarely. I don't have direct setup to a printer. I can print something from Joe's machine. But I very rarely print, and I don't want to print. And one of my struggles is this was recognized.
Put it all on the thing like that.
The Info Poverty Institute, and everybody agreed with that. That all these documents are put out in PDF format.
Right.
Designed to be printed, but if you print it, you could spend a fortune on colored ink.
Yeah, and you're also cutting down a lot of trees to make the paper.
But if you're browsing through, particularly if it's in columns, it's very difficult to read on a PDF, and we need to break free from that concept of paper. What I did with the Wealth of Networks was an interesting example.
What do you mean?
This is Yakai Benkler's book.
Oh, yes.
Lawrence Lessig said after its release, said was the most important book to read this year.
Really? Okay.
If you want to read,
Which book is important to read?
The Wealth of Networks.
The Wealth of Networks. Okay.
Yakai Benkler. Just Google that. You'll find his wiki site. You can find the site, the HTML. The one criticism I have of Yakai is he writes in very long paragraphs. They're dense. The economics of print require that. I was able then to take each paragraph and each sentence within the paragraph make an indented without a button, indented but not bulleted item. That makes it so much simpler because you're reading small digestible amounts of information. That you're like, this is a byte of information, a sentence, a phrase is a byte of information.
They had a thing in the news.
And the economics of doing that, it doesn't cost any more to deliver information. This was a
great
concept,
promise in that.
This was a concept that came to me when I was working at the city jail as librarian. This was after I dropped out of academia, after being involved.
This was in England or here?
No, in Baltimore City Jail. I became
they
the
call them Borstalls in England.
I set up the library there, and I ended up being the first to introduce microcomputers there too.
Good for you.
But became the law librarian. Set up a law library. So where was I going to on that?
Well, you were talking about the economies of it and how much information there is and how easy it is to work with information and everything, and not needing to put it on paper.
Right. And I'd realized that at an early point, and I experienced when I came to the U.S. after Cambridge. I was a research assistant in Boston, the Institute of Human Sciences, on a quantitative analysis of the French Revolution.
Quantitative analysis.
I was offered the post after attending and participating in a seminar that Gilbert Shapiro, the project director, had done, made at Cambridge, and I must have raised some intelligent questions. My professor then said to me, he'd like you to apply to be his research assistant.
Really?
So I spent a year in Boston.
So you've been involved at this almost like you're one of the early inputs.
I was using for a little bit a time-sharing system with MIT, a remote time-sharing terminal, doing with cards, processing blocks of cards. I started to figure out how much, like one of those 1 gigabyte or 8 gigabyte little USB drives would be in terms of tractor trailers if it was IBM cards, and how many trees it would be.
And it's true.
And what it would take to deliver all of that through all these industrial processes. Those don't need to be done because you can hear stuff.
That's right.
You can follow a book. You can have solar powered units that can be done by hand, that can be done with different ways with little mini solar panels, and use sound. So you can learn with sound and have screen display and some minimal amount of printing, but printing that you could do like cover in plastic and have on a curriculum board kind of thing. Not everybody has that copy.
And the educational implications are huge. And then I saw a thing in the paper the other day. There's a fellow who's written 200,000 books. You can do a thing on Google News, do 200,000 books that comes up, 200,000 books, and they're not really written, what he's done is he arranged algorithms in order to get pieces of information that are arranged, and then it's put out into the computer, and then it's printed on demand, and you can get down to the most narrow casting kind of thing, and by putting them together, it's a very interesting concept.
Have you read some of his books?
No, I have never heard of him.
I wonder whether he's written anything about information ecology.
Well,
it's a growing
but it's
field
the pattern. It's the pattern recognizing the algorithms give a chance to do.
That sounds
so you want to look
very,
that. That's something you could look up, right?
Well,
just look up Google News.
Yeah.
And then type in 200,000 books. It'll come up. And he's from France, so he's from France, but he's also in San Diego now.
Yeah.
One question. We're almost at the end of the time. Are you optimistic or pessimistic for the human prospect?
I am optimistic, and I think this is something that the opportunities, the larger freedoms that exist in this world, in disconnecting some of our ties and our burdens that
to the history
of the material world, and living more lightly. We can do this with this
more
technology,
lightly, less carbon,
and much more intelligently. And ultimately, it's the intelligent. The strong try to dominate, but the intelligent survive. And it's the intelligence, and it's tapping in to the common. There's new forms, Wikipedias and those kind of collective, collaborative documents, are new forms of intelligence, a new laboratories, a new parliaments, a new spaces in which there are colleges. There's a kind of space of learning. They're a learning environment.
That's right.
And,
new institutional
I got to TiddlyWiki through Moodle, which is modular, object-oriented, dynamic learning environment.
Wow.
And that's a wonderful space. It was more complicated and needed a server, and its wiki concept wasn't very good, so that's when I discovered TiddlyWiki. But that sense, I think of TiddlyWiki as a modular object, that everything is little modules, that in the physical world, everything is fixed together in its relationship. In a library, a book can be next to two books.
Yeah, that's what he had to think.
In this digital world, it can be next to as many books as it wants to be.
Yeah, that fellow did 200,000 books. The USBN, is it? The thing where they give ISBN. That's really an interesting grid to put on reality, because you arrange all the realities, because he has to index it all like that. Those kind of things are interesting. I don't know. There's worry. We got all kinds of problems. We have weapon systems that are apparently species lethal now. And we've got leadership that might be tending toward the old geopolitical thinking that doesn't take into account the new dawning possibilities of a liberated order. And it is possible for us now to have weapon systems unleashed that could destroy the entire species, something new.
I'm disturbed, and very little attention seems to be given to the new motto that's been adopted by the Air Force.
The Air Force?
Which is something that some people may be able to translate into German, above all. Über alles.
Über alles, yeah. Well, I just did take it away.
So you can find me by going to YouTube and searching for La Perla Garden, and you'll find a link to me. Or you can Google information ecologist, use quotes for that, and you'll find a lot of links to my work. Or you can go to www.ngoframework.net with a hyphen between NGO and framework. And that's the site for the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Well done. Okay, thank you, Bob, very much. Okay, and you're going to do black for 60 seconds? They want?
Oh, perfect. that worked out perfect.
You're going to have pink. The reason I was trying to bring it in, tomorrow's program, I did it last week, is with the military services. They've had air, they've had armed